There are stories that belong to the earth, stories whispered by the wind, stories carried in the rhythm of waves. But there are also stories that belong to the sky, tales so old and so quiet that only the patient can hear them. Today, I will share one such story with you. It is called When the Sun Shared a Secret. It begins on a summer morning, in a village so small it could be missed by travelers who didn't look carefully. The village lay nestled in a valley, surrounded by rolling hills that turned golden at sunrise and violet at dusk. The people who lived there were simple folk, farmers, shepherds, and storytellers who believed that the sky itself watched over them. Among them was a boy named Eli. Eli was 12, tall for his age, with hair that always seemed a little too messy no matter how often his mother tried to smooth it down. His eyes, however, were steady and curious, the kind of eyes that looked at the world not just to see it, but to ask questions about it. While the other children of the village were content with chasing goats or skipping stones, Eli was always staring upward, watching the clouds drift, the stars sparkle, and the sun burn with its endless fire. "Eli," his father often said, shaking his head, "your hands are meant for work, not for pointing at the sky." But Eli couldn't help it. There was something about the sun that called to him, something that felt alive, as if the sun itself held a secret too big for anyone else to notice. One morning, long before the others in the village had risen, Eli climbed the tallest hill near his home. He sat at the very top, his knees drawn up, watching the horizon. The first rays of dawn stretched across the valley like golden fingers, painting the rooftops with light. And then, as the round edge of the sun lifted higher, Eli whispered into the warm air, almost without thinking, "Sun, do you have a secret?" He expected nothing. After all, who talks to the sun and hopes for an answer? But then, something extraordinary happened. The light shimmered, almost as if it had heard him. And then, a voice, gentle yet deep, filled his ears. "Child," said the sun, "you are the first to ask me in 1,000 years." Eli's heart nearly stopped. He looked around, half expecting a trick. But no one was there, just him, and the sky, and the blazing sun that now seemed to be leaning closer. "You can speak?" Eli whispered. "I can," the sun replied, "but I only speak to those who are willing to listen with more than their ears." Eli's throat was dry. Then, "What is your secret?" The sun grew brighter, and the warmth on Eli's face felt like an embrace. "Patience," it said. "First, you must earn it." From that day on, Eli returned to the hill every morning. The villagers thought him strange. "Always staring at the sky," they muttered. "That boy will grow up with his head lost in the clouds." But Eli didn't care. The sun had spoken to him, and he was determined to hear more. Each morning, the sun shared pieces of its secret, not all at once, but little by little, like puzzle pieces scattered across days. "Do you see the farmers working before the heat grows strong?" the sun asked one morning. Eli nodded. "They rise early because they understand me. They know my strength can help or harm. Wisdom is knowing when to use light and when to seek shade." Another day, the sun said, "Do you see the flowers? They turn their faces toward me, not because I am powerful, but because they trust me. They believe I will rise again tomorrow. That trust keeps them alive." Day after day, the lessons continued. About balance, about rhythm, about giving warmth without burning, shining without blinding. But Eli was impatient. He wanted the whole secret. He wanted the sun to reveal everything at once. "Why won't you just tell me?" Eli cried one morning, stamping his foot. "If you have a secret, why make me wait?" The sun's voice grew firm, yet kind. "Because some truths are too bright to see all at once. Just as your eyes cannot stare at me directly, your heart cannot bear wisdom if it comes too suddenly. You must grow into it, little by little." Eli sighed, frustrated. But deep down, he understood. As weeks turned into months, the boy began to change. He worked more patiently beside his father, guided his younger sister with gentleness instead of annoyance, and listened to the stories of the village elders with respect. The villagers noticed the change. "Strange boy," they said again, but now they said it with a smile. "There's something different in him, something steady, like sunlight." Then came the day of the great drought. The valley had always been blessed with rivers and rains, but that summer, the clouds vanished. The ground cracked, the crops wilted, and the villagers grew desperate. Fear crept into their hearts. One evening, as the people gathered in the square, voices rose in panic. What if the rains never return? What if the fields die? What if we starve? The village elder, a woman named Mara, lifted her hands. "We must be patient," she said. But even her voice trembled. Eli stood among them, clutching his little sister's hand. He looked up at the empty sky, and for the first time, he felt the weight of the sun's silence. For days, it had not spoken, only burned, only watched. That night, unable to sleep, Eli climbed the hill once more. The moon shone faintly, but he spoke not to it. He spoke to the absent voice he longed to hear. "Son," he whispered, "where are you? We need you now. Please, tell me your secret. I'm ready." For a long while, there was nothing. Just the hum of insects and the sigh of dry grass. Eli's chest ached with disappointment. But then, at the very edge of dawn, as the first light touched the earth, the sun spoke again. "My child," it said, softly but clearly, "the secret is this. I rise every day, not because the world is easy, not because the skies are kind, but because it is my duty to shine. Even when the clouds hide me, even when the earth grows dry, I do not give up. I rise again and again, because hope must be constant, even when the world falters." Eli felt tears on his cheeks. "So? We must keep going, even when it feels hopeless?" "Yes," said the sun, "especially then. That is when your light matters most." Armed with those words, Eli returned to the village. The people were weary, frightened, nearly broken. But he stood before them and repeated what he had learned. "We cannot control the rains," he told them, "but we can keep working. We can share what we have. We can plant deeper roots, dig for water, and trust that the skies will not stay empty forever. The sun has not abandoned us. It still rises. So must we." His words carried a power beyond his years. And slowly, the people began to act. They dug wells together. They shared their food with fairness. They encouraged one another through the long, dry days. And then, at last, the rains returned. The valley drank deeply, the rivers filled, and life bloomed once more. From that day forward, the villagers no longer called Eli strange. They called him the boy who listened to the sun. And Eli, though still young, carried himself with the quiet strength of someone who had been entrusted with a secret. The sun still spoke to him from time to time. But Eli no longer begged for answers. He had learned the greatest truth of all, that wisdom is not something you wait to receive. It is something you live day by day, like the rising of the dawn. And so, dear listener, remember this. The sun's secret is not locked in the sky. It is within you. To rise again and again, even when life feels heavy. To keep shining, even when the world feels dark. To trust, like the flowers, that tomorrow will come. That is the secret worth carrying.